Well, hello. So the purpose of this video is to review some notes regarding kinematics equations and the process that I'm using to think about and always follow as we begin to solve some of these questions that deal with acceleration and displacement and initial velocity and that sort of thing. So the first thing you need to make sure and put into your notes is this table. I know this seems like a lot, but it will make sense soon. The idea is we have symbols, and then these are some different symbols that we're going to have in equation form, and then this stands for what they are. These are going to be some common units. Please note that this is the same on all of these. You don't necessarily have to write all three of them. Just write it maybe once, and then just make a note that it's the same, just like this is the same. They're all three velocities. You'll notice here that the common units of acceleration are some kind of, I just basically copied the unit for velocity and then I added units of time after it. Over here on the SI units, you'll notice I showed acceleration two ways. This would by far be the most common way it's showed, but it's worth noting that sometimes this helps us understand what it's really saying. And then of course we have units for time, distance, which is, we'll think of that in terms of displacement, and the SI units are over here. Notice this is all M's and S's, meters and seconds, all of this, but how they're arranged can make a big difference. So I'll give you a second, make sure to pause this and get this into your notes. And by the way, this is going to be probably around 2 pages worth of notes that needs to be permanently in your binder, and it's something you're going to be accessing from now till Christmas multiple times. And so make sure and do a good job of writing this neat and keeping it organized. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to want to do is look at 4 equations. I'm going to put them up here in no particular order. And it's important to note, this is the exact same equation. I just put it here with extra mathematical things like brackets and parentheses to help you see what it's doing. If this one makes more sense to you, just write this one down. If this one makes more sense for you, write this one down. This is the exact same equation. Just pick one of them and write it down. This is from how the physics classroom shows it. These are supposed to be times. It's supposed to be like a asterisk for timesing between them, but the second equation is here. Again, I would expect you to pause this and get this written down. These again are the same equation. Write one of them down, whichever ones make more sense to you. If the red ones do, write those down. If you really struggle with order of operations, this really simplifies what's happening within the equation. I would recommend just doing the one in black. These are the same thing. Here's the third of 4. Again, you should pause your video and write this down. Pick one. If you're picking red or black, I would stick with it. It would make the most sense. And then finally, here's the 4th one. Once again, pick one. These are the same. Now, you'll notice as you're doing this, and I'll just show, you should notice as we're going through here, these two have pretty much all of them that we're talking about, all of the variables. You should notice that, I guess we'll just show the black ones here. There is a connection here. You'll see VF. Well, what does VF stand for? Well, we put that in our table here that we already did. We see VI. Well, what does VI stand for? It's velocity initial. We put that in the table here. T, well, that's time. We put that in our table. D, that's displacement. We put that in our table. Acceleration, well, that's in our table. It's worth noting that, see, our table also has those common units and then the SI units. There's times when you'll be looking at a question and it'll be giving you units, and knowing whatever units it's giving you, maybe at the beginning SI units, and it might be a little more complicated later, those units that you're given can help you identify which variables you actually have. Now, there are four equations, and I apologize, this thing's really sloppy, but it's worth noting that every equation has 4 variables, and you need 3 of the 4 to solve this in one step. So what that would look like is if you had an equation here, say you had these 3, velocity initial, acceleration, time, well then you could solve for velocity final. Or perhaps you had velocity final, velocity initial, and acceleration, well now you could solve for time. You've got to have 3 of the 4 to solve it in one step. You can of course use systems of equations if you don't have 3 of the 4, but that's not something we're starting off doing. It's also worth noting there's different equations here that have different ones. So when we look at this original table, we're primarily focusing on these 5 in the sense that the equations are all built from these 5. I include velocity in there just to help you see that it's just part of something we've already done. But these 4 equations that we just did, that would look like that, every one of them has 4 of those 5. There's one missing from all of them. For example, this one is missing displacement. This one is missing time. So they all have 4 of the 5. To solve something using these, you've got to have, as I mentioned, 3 of the 4 to solve them in one step.